I love adding titles and little slide down moments to my videos because it allows me to bring through some of that visual branding to incorporate the fonts that I've chosen in my mood board, the color schemes that we chose. This is kind of another area where you can bring through that stylistic element. We're gonna pull up this little segment from our helicopter series Heading East, where we did these little airport tours every time we stopped in every single episode. We made it really quick, really fun, and we used the same music every single time, and we used the same format every time. What I did in this instance, we'll just have a quick look at it, is I designed this slide down to differentiate the airport tour sequence from the rest of the episode.
Maybe this will be the first installment of our airport tour series.
I designed a little slide down that kind of just said, okay, this is the airport tour, this is the airport that we're at, and we just use the color schemes and elements from our mood board in this slide. Now, this is kind of pulling on my graphic design background. I am not an animator. I don't know how to use After Effects that well, so the easiest way for me to incorporate some of these graphic design elements is by designing these slides either in Photoshop or Illustrator, bringing them in as a JPEG or an Illustrator file, and then using keyframes in the Effect Controls panel to animate them, which adds a little bit of movement without having to have an entire knowledge of a new piece of software. Basically, what I do for a lot of my little titles that I add is just slide them down with a slide sound effect to kind of emphasize that movement, and then slide them back out of the frame again. And it's just a JPEG or an Illustrator file with a motion keyframe animation done in the Effect Controls panel. So let's just have a look at that real quick. We'll zoom in. If you look over here in the motion portion of the Effect Controls panel, you can see that I've put in a couple of keyframes here to animate that slide. So if we zoom in, we can see that there's a position keyframe here, and I've just animated that, and then we've added a little slide sound effect. So if I turn off all of my audio here and just turn on this sound effect, we'll just play this through and see what it looks like and sounds like. So you can see it just slides down, comes into frame, and then we cut right to the second clip. And again, I'm not doing any fancy animation here. This is a very simple and effective way to add a little bit of a graphic element without having to have the knowledge of After Effects. Just kind of like we talked about at using presets or LUTs for your videos. If you're not really sure how to do any animations, you're new to it, you just kind of want to drag and drop and change the type scenario, then you can buy these little templates to use in your videos where you can just change the font and change the type and customize it to your videos. Now, other people can also buy these, so you might see them show up in other people's videos, but it's definitely an easy way to up your production value in your videos. There's a couple of things you want to keep in mind when you're adding type or titles. The first thing is, if you are shooting for YouTube, you want to make sure that your type is big enough that you can read it on your phone. So when we're editing on a big screen, it's really easy to see a font that's down in the corner. But if you watch that on your phone, once it's scaled down really small, can you still read that type? So just ensure that your type is large enough to be readable at its smallest format. The second thing you want to make sure of is that the fonts or typefaces that you're picking out aren't too thin that they start to disappear at a smaller size as well. And then suddenly you can't really read what's happening. So be aware of that. Another thing you want to keep in mind is the colors that you're choosing for your type as well. There's certain colors that just don't work together that are really difficult to look at. Red text on black, for example, or black text on red is very impossible to read. Kind of makes your eyes go kind of wiggly. Same with yellow text on blue. So if you're experimenting with using different color combinations and they might look good on your big screen, export a portion of that and look at it on your phone and see if your eyes play any weird tricks on you. Also, if you're using white text on a background, just make sure that you can read it. Oftentimes using white text on footage can be difficult. Be aware of that if you're also using white fonts over your footage. When you're on the hunt for fonts to use in your video, you might be really tempted to use a lot of them. Oh, there's so many fun ones. How can you choose? I want to use this one, this one, this one, and this one. If you aren't a graphic designer and aren't really sure what fonts work together and how to make those fonts work in a cohesive way, I definitely recommend picking no more than 2 fonts to use. Pick one font for your heading, one font for a subheading, and just kind of use that throughout your videos. When I'm building a mood board and picking fonts for my videos, I start to kind of build out a little bit of a style guide so I know where to use what font when. So for example, in our videos, we like to use location titles. So I have a little layout done that says, this is the font you're going to use and the size it's going to be, and this is where it's going to be positioned in the video. And so anytime that I have a location title up, it's going to be in the same spot, in the same font size, in the exact same font. So it's consistent through one video or through a series of videos. We're at a point now where we've talked about all of it from start to finish, setting the tone all the way through editing, music, and color grading, and now titles. So at this point, you should be able to look at that old project and have a bit of a better idea on how we can improve that and finish it off. Next up, we're going to talk about honing your process and applying all the tools we talked about in this class beyond just your video.